Did you know that Max Roach changed jazz drumming forever by making the drums a lead instrument instead of just keeping the beat? From revolutionary drummers who transformed rhythm to trumpeters who brought swing to life, here are 20 jazz stars you didn't know passed away. Pharoah Sanders. Pharoah Sanders was the epitome of a jazz pioneer with his deep spiritual tone. He played tenor saxophone. And if you have ever heard him play, you know that it wasn't so much about the notes, so much about feeling, energy, and spirituality. Sanders' music was often more like an adventure, taking the listener on a trip to somewhere else. One of his greatest influence was the most renowned saxophonist in the history of jazz, John Coltrane. In the 1960s, Sanders played with Coltrane's band and contributed to expanding the horizons of jazz. Their music was not all about melodies. It was about experiencing something intense, though you may not always have grasped its meaning. Sanders was a central figure in what was known as spiritual jazz, which combined African rhythms, free jazz, and soulful meditative sounds. His best-known album, Karma, 1969, includes the legendary tune, "The Creator Has a Master Plan." The song lasts more than 30 minutes and is filled with repetitive saxophone melodies, chants, and cosmic energy. During his career, Sanders collaborated with other jazz legends, such as Alice Coltrane, another artist who worked with spiritual themes within her music. Although his music was not necessarily mainstream, he had a loyal base of jazz enthusiasts who admired his raw, emotional sound. Although Sanders passed away in 2022, his music still has an impact on contemporary jazz and even other genres such as hip-hop and electronic music. 2. Ramsey Lewis. If you're a fan of jazz that gets you to tap your feet, chances are you've heard Ramsey Lewis, whether or not you realized it. While Pharoah Sanders' cosmic and mystical jazz was more elite fare, Ramsey Lewis brought jazz into the mainstream, making it fun, funky, and universally appealing. He was a pianist who mastered blending jazz with soul, funk, and even pop. Lewis' largest hit was The In Crowd, 1965, which was one of the best-known jazz songs ever. The song had a catchy beat that made it distinct from standard jazz tunes, and it even topped the Billboard charts, a feat rarely achieved by a jazz instrumental. His music was suave, chic, and ideal for whatever mood you were in, whether dancing or just relaxing. Throughout his career, Lewis recorded over 80 albums, demonstrating his skill and commitment to jazz. He didn't remain in one genre. He explored various sounds, from classical influences to funk and even electronic jazz. During the 1970s, he collaborated on jazz funk with Earth, Wind and Fire, demonstrating how jazz could be combined with popular music. Aside from his music, Ramsey Lewis was a popular personality in the jazz community. He had radio and television shows, introducing jazz to the masses and educating them about the genre. His friendly nature and gift for making jazz accessible helped make him a favorite among fans and artists alike. When he passed away in 2022, it was a major blow to jazz fans. 3. Joey DeFrancesco. Joey DeFrancesco was among the finest Hammond B3 organists in the world, and he restored the instrument to prominence in jazz. But he didn't play only the organ. He was a full-fledged multi-instrumentalist, also mastering the trumpet and saxophone. He was born in 1971 and was a child prodigy. He began playing the organ at a very young age, and as a teenager, he was already a star on the rise. Indeed, at the age of 17, he went on tour with Miles Davis, one of the largest jazz legends of all time. That's not something most musicians can claim. His playing was energetic and full of soul, combining traditional jazz with blues and funk. His talent for making the Hammond B3 organ sound as it could sing was a standout among musicians. DeFrancesco's playing was warm and conversational in feel. Every note sounded expressive and alive. Throughout his career, he produced over 30 albums and collaborated with the world's greatest jazz musicians. His album In the Key of the Universe, 2019, revealed his spiritual nature, demonstrating that jazz was not only about talent, it was about feeling and connection. Unfortunately, DiFrancesco passed away in 2022 at the age of only 51. His demise came as a shock to the jazz world because he was still producing amazing music and touring. 4. Wayne Shorter. Wayne Shorter revolutionized jazz on his saxophone. He was not only a musician, but a composer, an inventor, and one of the most innovative thinkers jazz has ever known. Shorter was born in 1933 and gained fame during the 1960s. He performed with Miles Davis in his iconic quintet, contributing to the development of the sound of jazz at a period of great transformation. He did not merely play the saxophone, he narrated with it. His solos were not merely technical exercises, they were about emotion, enigma, and exploration. One of his greatest contributions to jazz was forming the band Weather Reports in the 1970s. The band combined rock, funk, and jazz, creating a genre known as jazz fusion. The hit song Birdland was a massive success, and to this day, it remains one of the most popular jazz fusion songs of all time. Shorter collaborated on iconic albums with artists such as Joni Mitchell, and even assisted Herbie Hancock's revolutionary music. His pieces, including Footprints and Speak No Evil, became jazz classics learned by musicians worldwide. What was unique about Shorter was that he was able to adapt. He never remained fixed in one style. He was constantly on the lookout for new sounds and concepts. Even in his advanced age, he was still producing music that sounded new and invigorating. He passed away in 2023 at the age of 89, leaving a legacy that few artists can compare to. 5. McCoy Tyner. McCoy Tyner was a central member of the John Coltrane Quartet, arguably the greatest jazz band of all time. His piano playing was forceful, rhythmic, and energetic. He didn't play the piano, he assaulted it in a manner that made every note count. Tyner was born in 1938 and began playing piano as a young child. Before he was in his early 20s, he had already been with Coltrane's group and was assisting in creating the sound of modal jazz, a genre of music that emphasized rich, soulful improvisation over intricate chord changes. He was featured on Coltrane's influential album A Love Supreme, 1965, ranked one of the all-time greats of jazz. But Tyner wasn't merely a sideman. He continued to enjoy a phenomenal solo career, recording more than 70 albums as a band leader. His playing was usually termed powerful and spiritual, bringing together African rhythms, blues, and hard bop. One of his most popular albums, The Real McCoy in '67, is a must-hear for any jazz enthusiast. Unfortunately, McCoy Tyner passed away in 2020 at the age of 81. Although he might not have been as famous as some of the other jazz legends, his sound can be heard in the work of hundreds of contemporary pianists. His ability to play powerfully with his left hand and his sense of rhythmic momentum revolutionized how jazz piano was played. Chick Corea. Chick Corea was all about discovering new sounds and propelling jazz forward. He was among the leaders of jazz fusion, a genre that combined jazz with rock, funk, and electronica. Corea became famous in the 1960s when he toured with Miles Davis, helping to create seminal albums such as Bitches Brew, 1970, which helped to establish the jazz fusion genre. But it was during the 1970s that he made his greatest impact by leading his band, Return to Forever. This band blended jazz with electric instruments, Latin rhythms, and even progressive rock elements, producing a sound that was exciting, adventurous, and utterly new. One of his better-known tunes, Spain, is a jazz standard that combines lovely melodies with rapid, driving rhythms. You may not recognize Chick Corea's name, but you've likely heard Spain somewhere. Musicians everywhere have performed it in jazz clubs, concerts, and even high school music programs. During his career, Correa received 25 Grammy Awards, making him one of the most iconic jazz musicians ever. He maintained playing and writing until passing away in 2021 at the age of 79. Roy Hargrove. Roy Hargrove was not only a wonderful trumpeter, but a musician who took jazz to a completely new generation. Born in 1969 in Texas, Hargrove was an extraordinary musical talent from a young age. While he was still in high school, he was already impressing greats like Wynton Marsalis, who mentored him. Hargrove wasn't strictly about old-school jazz. He enjoyed mashing up styles. Although he could play straight-ahead bebop with the likes of anyone else, he also greatly admired hip-hop and R&B. This influenced him to work with musicians not just within jazz, such as D'Angelo, Erykah Badu, and Common. His contributions to D'Angelo's album Voodoo contributed to the neo-soul movement, demonstrating that jazz could be easily blended with contemporary sounds. One of his best-known bands was the Roy Hargrove Quintet, in which he had his phenomenal trumpet playing set out while alternating between soulful ballads and frenetic improvisations. However, the biggest success he had was with his group RH Factor, in which he combined jazz with funk, hip-hop, and R&B to produce a new and dynamic sound that the youth generation adored. Hargrove took home 2 Grammys, both of which were awarded for Latin jazz. His Havana album in 1997 and Directions in Music 2002, which was dedicated to Miles Davis and John Coltrane. Hargrove played with unending passion and the talent to bring his trumpet to life in songs. Sadly, Hargrove had fought kidney disease for many years. Despite his ailments, he still played gigs until his demise. He passed away in 2018 at the age of only 49. 8. Geri Allen. Geri Allen was breaking barriers, but in a different manner. She was an innovative jazz pianist and composer who was famous for her daring, groundbreaking style. Born in 1957 in Michigan, Allen was among the few women to achieve fame in the world of jazz, which was dominated by men. Her piano playing was a blend of traditional jazz, experimental improvisation, and contemporary influences. She was not afraid to push the boundaries with various rhythms and harmonies, and her music was both difficult and lovely. She collaborated with jazz greats such as Ornette Coleman, Betty Carter, and Charlie Haydn throughout her career, showing that she was more than a match for the best. Allen was also a gifted composer, writing music that combined various traditions, ranging from African drumming to gospel. A standout album among her most popular ones, The Nurturer, 1991, demonstrated her skill at infusing warmth and sentiment into her playing. She also recorded 21, 1994, an exquisite trio session with drummer Tony Williams and bassist Ron Carter. Aside from her music, Allen was also interested in education and mentoring. She was a professor and did her best to assist young musicians, particularly women in jazz. Her efforts paved the way for greater diversity in the jazz scene. Unfortunately, Geri Allen passed away in 2017 at the age of 60 from cancer. 9. Horace Silver. Horace Silver was not merely a pianist, but also a jazz visionary. Born in 1928 in Connecticut, Silver came up in a family that listened to both jazz and Cape Verdean folk music. Early on, it was obvious that he had a particular knack for rhythm and melody. Silver became renowned for assisting in the development of hard bop, a genre of jazz that blended blues, gospel, and R&B with the high-energy bebop. His music was groovy and made listeners want to dance, and it was more open to the masses than the complex, abstract tones of bebop. One of the most well-known compositions by Silver is Song for My Father, 1964, a lovely tune drawn from his Cape Verdean roots. The riff that starts the song has become legendary and even reached pop and rock. Steely Dan borrowed the same chord progression in their hit single "Ricky, Don't Lose That Number." This single ensured Silver's place in jazz history, but he had numerous other classics such as "The Preacher" and "Senor Blues." Silver was also one of the founding members of the Jazz Messengers, which he shared with drummer Art Blakey. Although he went solo later on, his stint with the Jazz Messengers contributed to the history of the future of jazz, popularizing the genre of hard bop. Silver continued to play and write music for decades, never straying from his style. He passed away in 2014 at the age of 85. 10. Cedar Walton. Cedar Walton may not be as well known as some of the other great jazz giants, but he was widely respected by musicians. Born in 1934 in Texas, Walton was a stellar pianist and composer who toured with some of the greatest jazz players in history. Similar to Horace Silver, Walton was also affiliated with Art Blakey's Jazz Messengers, becoming a member of the band during the 1960s. The Jazz Messengers were famous for nurturing young talent, and Walton soon emerged as a top-notch player, infusing the group with his characteristic soulful and swinging piano sound. Walton's greatest asset was his versatility. He could swing hard on fast bebop songs, but also play soft, delicate ballads with extraordinary beauty. Among his most well-known compositions are Bolivia, Ugetsu, and Firm Roots. These tunes became jazz standards, performed by musicians worldwide. Aside from playing, Walton was a popular composer and arranger. His pieces exuded a distinctive sophistication, and he could couple intricate harmonies with infectious melodies so that his works were both refined and accessible. Walton remained engaged in jazz his entire lifetime, directing trios, quartets, and even big bands. He passed away in 2013 at age 79. 11. Freddie Hubbard. Born in 1938 in Indianapolis, Indiana, Hubbard came from a family of musical enthusiasts. Hubbard played the trumpet with phenomenal power, velocity, and articulation, ranking him as one of the greatest jazz trumpeters of all time. Hubbard gained fame during the 1960s jazz era, performing with icons such as Art Blakey, Herbie Hancock, and Wayne Shorter. He was a member of the hard bop school, but he never hesitated to explore other sounds. His sound combined bebop, soul, and even fusion elements, and as such, he was among the most versatile jazz musicians of his era. One of his best-known albums is Red Clay, 1970, which indicated his transition into jazz fusion. The title cut is a jazz standard with funky rhythms and amazing trumpet solos. Many artists still consider Red Clay an ideal model of how jazz can progress without losing its soul. Hubbard's precision and intensity in hitting high notes made him unique. His trumpet playing had a distinctive, warm sound that was immediately recognizable. He received a Grammy Award for his album First Light, 1971, and went on to influence jazz musicians for decades. Sadly, in later life, a serious injury to his lip impacted his playing. Notwithstanding this mishap, he continued to play and inspire. He passed away in 2008 at the age of 70, but his recordings are still a must for any jazz enthusiast. 12. Joe Zawinul. Joe Zawinul was not only a fantastic musician, he was a trailblazer. Born in Austria in 1932, Zawinul began as a straight-ahead jazz pianist, but emerged as one of the largest names in jazz fusion. He had an ear for combining styles from jazz and rock to world music. Zawinul initially achieved success with Cannonball Adderley, writing songs like the hit Mercy, Mercy, Mercy in 1966. The track was a crossover hit, presenting jazz to the masses. It was, however, his greatest influence that came with co-founding Weather Report during the early 1970s. Weather Report was among the most successful jazz fusion groups, which were famous for fusing jazz improvisation with rock and electronic music. One of their most popular tunes, Birdland, 1977, became a jazz standard. The song, with its infectious melody and creative application of synthesizers, continues to be performed by jazz bands worldwide. Zawinul was a master of the synthesizer, an instrument that was not typical of jazz before his innovations. His ability to produce rich atmospheric sounds changed the sound and approach of jazz. Even when Weather Report dissolved, Zawinul continued to break the rules. He created the Zawinul Syndicate, which incorporated a blend of jazz, funk, and global music influences. His music sounded worldly, with a fusion of different cultures blended into a whole new thing. Zawinul passed away in 2007 at age 75, but his legacy endures. 13. Michael Brecker. A saxophonist with unparalleled ability, Michael Brecker was recognized for his technical mastery and emotional expressiveness. He was more than a jazz player. He played all kinds of genres, working with pop and rock performers such as Steely Dan, Paul Simon, and James Taylor. Born in 1949 in Philadelphia, Brecker was raised in a musical household. His older brother, Randy Brecker, was an exceptional trumpet player, and they both established the legendary Brecker Brothers Band during the 1970s. They blended jazz, funk, and rock music, and opened up the genre of jazz for a new generation. Brecker's solo career was equally remarkable. He possessed a remarkable skill for improvising intricate solos without sacrificing melodic and listening appeal. His playing was so smooth and accurate that other sax players listened to his recordings to learn from him. He was equally skilled on the EWI, electronic wind instrument, a space-age sax-like instrument that enabled him to produce distinctive sounds. His ability wasn't lost on anyone. He took home 15 Grammy Awards, making him one of the most awarded saxophonists of all time. Though he may have been famous in the world of jazz, many non-fans didn't appreciate just how much of an impact he had on music. Unfortunately, Brecker was diagnosed with a rare blood disorder and passed away in 2007 at age 57. 14. Oscar Peterson. Renowned for his lightning-quick fingers, classy playing, and phenomenal improvisation ability, Oscar Peterson was the real deal. A child prodigy born in 1925 in Montreal, Canada, Peterson was playing professionally as a teenager. His idolized inspirations included greats Art Tatum and Nat King Cole. But Peterson created his distinctive style, effortless, swinging, and brimming with energy. He became world famous during the 1950s and 60s, performing with jazz icons such as Ella Fitzgerald, Louis Armstrong, and Count Basie. Solo or with a trio, Peterson's performances were breathtaking. His fingers appeared to dance across the keys of the piano, creating music that was both technically flawless and emotionally compelling. One of his best-known songs is Hymn to Freedom, which was linked to the Civil Rights Movement. Peterson's music was able to communicate to people, expressing much emotion without ever saying a word. Even after experiencing a stroke in 1993 that partially paralyzed his left hand, Peterson continued to play and record music. His passion and dedication to jazz never wavered. He passed away in 2007 at the age of 82. 15. James Moody. If you ever listen to the song Moody's Mood for Love, then you are already familiar with James Moody's music, even though you may not have known it. This legendary saxophonist and flautist were recognized for his silky, smooth sound, innovative improvising, and high-energy performances. Born in 1925 in Savannah, Georgia, Moody developed a love of music at an early age. He started playing alto saxophone during his teenage years before moving on to the tenor sax, which would propel him to stardom. After serving in World War II with the U.S. Air Force, Moody had his initial breakthrough when he was hired to play with Dizzy Gillespie's band later in the 1940s. Playing for Gillespie, who was among the founders of the bebop school of jazz, assisted in honing his distinctive style. but it was in 1952 that his career truly skyrocketed. That's when he recorded a saxophone solo version of the song "I'm in the Mood for Love," which later became Moody's Mood for Love when singer King Pleasure added lyrics to it. The song became a jazz classic, covered by artists like Aretha Franklin and Amy Winehouse. Even though Moody recorded many other fantastic albums, this one song remained his most famous piece. Moody's career spanned more than 6 decades, and he never ceased performing. His work towards jazz was recognized with a National Endowment for the Arts Jazz Masters Award in 1998. Unfortunately, James Moody passed away in 2010, aged 85, after fighting pancreatic cancer. 16. George Duke. George Duke was a jazz fusion pioneer, merging jazz with funk, R&B, and rock. He was not only a superb pianist, he was a producer, composer, and visionary who assisted in creating contemporary jazz music. Born in 1946 in San Rafael, California, Duke began playing the piano at the tender age of 4. He was influenced by Duke Ellington, whom he had seen live as a child. That experience transformed his life, and he devoted himself to music. By the 1970s, Duke was experimenting with synthesizers and electronic keyboards, creating his distinctive sound. He toured with jazz icons such as Cannonball Adderley and Frank Zappa, but he also enjoyed a thriving solo career, producing funky, soulful jazz albums that extended the boundaries of the music. His 1977 album Reach For It was a massive hit, bringing a new audience to jazz fusion. Aside from playing, Duke was a sought-after producer, producing major artists such as Miles Davis, Michael Jackson, and Jill Scott. He was recognized for his capacity to seamlessly merge styles ranging from smooth jazz to funk to R&B. Despite decades of working in the music industry, Duke never ceased creating music. He put out more than 30 albums throughout his career, constantly coming up with new ideas. Unfortunately, he passed away in 2013 at the age of 67 after suffering from leukemia. 17. Al Jarreau. Al Jarreau is never far from discussion. He wasn't merely a jazz singer. He was the master at combining jazz with R&B, pop, and even funk. His smooth but astonishingly adaptable voice rendered him one of the most unique vocalists in jazz history. Born in 1940 in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, music ran in the blood of Jarreau from day one. Both his parents were musicians. His mother was a church pianist, and his father was a minister who also enjoyed singing. His musical background helped him gain incredible singing abilities. Initially, Jarreau did not pursue a full-time music career. He actually graduated with a degree in psychology and worked as a rehabilitation counselor. But in the late 1960s, he chose to indulge in his real passion, music. He made it big during the 1970s when he began working in Los Angeles jazz clubs and caught the eye of record companies. Throughout his career, he received 7 Grammy Awards, making him one of the rare artists to win in jazz, pop, and R&B. His unmatched versatility set him apart from other jazz vocalists. Unfortunately, after a long and illustrious career, Jarreau passed away in 2017 at the age of 76. 18. Terry Callier. Terry Callier was renowned for fusing jazz, soul, and folk music in a manner that few musicians could match. His songs were poetic, emotive, and personal. Born in 1945 in Chicago, Callier was raised in a city renowned for its thriving music culture. He began playing the guitar in his teenage years and soon crafted his unique style, combining folk storytelling with smooth jazz and soul rhythms. In the 1970s, he put out a string of albums that created a cult following. Tracks like Ordinary Joe and Dancing Girl exhibited his skill for combining profound, meaningful lyrics with lovely melodies. His songs were sometimes political, sometimes love ballads, but always heartfelt. But for all his ability, Callier did not achieve great commercial success in the United States. Disillusioned with the business, he retired from music during the 1980s and became a computer programmer at the University of Chicago. But then in the 1990s, something wonderful occurred. His music was rediscovered in Europe, and before he knew it, he had a new following. He began touring once more, put out new albums, and had a well-deserved resurgence. Sadly, after a fight with cancer, Callier passed away in 2012 at the age of 67. 19. Max Roach. Max Roach was born in 1924 in North Carolina, but grew up in New York City. During the 1940s, he worked on creating the fast and complex jazz known as bebop. He played along with such icons as Charlie Parker, Dizzy Gillespie, and Miles Davis, adding an entirely new world of creativity to the drums. Roach was famous for making the drums a lead instrument rather than a background beat. He pushed the boundaries of rhythm in ways no one else had. His album, We Insist, Freedom Now Suite, 1960, was also pioneering, using jazz to discuss civil rights. He kept pushing the boundaries of music throughout his life, influencing hundreds of drummers. Roach passed away in 2007 at age 83. 20. Clark Terry, born in 1920 in St. Louis, Clark Terry emerged as one of jazz's most esteemed trumpeters and teachers. Terry played for more than 7 decades with some of the largest stars of jazz, including Duke Ellington and Count Basie. His playing was smooth, whimsical, and full of personality, and he was a crowd favorite. One of his greatest contributions was as a mentor to up-and-coming musicians. He guided the careers of future jazz legends such as Quincy Jones and Miles Davis. Terry was also famous for his sense of humor, even bringing lighthearted and surprising moments to his performances. Even after fighting health problems later in life, he kept on teaching and inspiring musicians. He passed away in 2015 at the age of 94.